Good afternoon, I'm Dave Larson. I am the CTO for Spirent Communications.
Hi, I'm Karthik Sethuraman, and I'm filling in for my colleague Ari Banerjee. I work in the NEC 5G Strategy and Business Group responsible for SMO.
Okay, well, thank you guys. So look, 5G has got a lot of attention. So what are the business use cases? What's driving 5G? I mean, what about you, Mattias? You're Ericsson, you're the technology provider behind 5G, the main one. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and maybe we'll just go from there.
No.
There we go.
There you go.
Now a little bit of power. We have about 220 networks live on 5G in August. Ericsson delivered about 56 of those networks are dedicated to fixed wireless access. So we see a lot of momentum around 5G. And at the end of this year, we will probably have around 1 billion subscribers, growing to about 4 billion in 2027. So I think the momentum is there. It's quite different from other generations. We see much more interest in enterprise. And this is really something that is difficult for us to address. We are a company that is geared to sell to large service providers, to sell a lot to few customers. But all that interest in enterprise changes the game. We need to cooperate with partners. We need to be able to get these enterprise networks to work seamlessly together with the operators. And I think here MEF will come in big time.
Wow, that's amazing to hear that. Thank you, Mattias. David, and then maybe Karthik, and then Rohit.
Yeah, similar to Mattias, we have an interesting across the industry view. I think we deploy test equipment and validation equipment and assurance equipment against 5G cores and well over 1,000 5G deployments, which is similar in scale, probably is serving similar in terms of the number of users and subscribers. As said there, similarly, we see the same thing. It's fixed wireless access, it's enhanced mobile broadband, all Release 15 type capabilities, because we're still early in the journey of where we're going with 5G. And so for us, we're right at the beginning. We've been with the telecommunication providers and the network equipment providers throughout our entire history, or for the last 2 decades or so. And this is probably the most exciting intersection of where technology is changing. And with 5G, it's changing because it's becoming cloudified, right? It's adopting the principles of the cloud. It's adopting the principles of distributed and really tight security. I know you want to talk about that, Pascal. We'll get into it. But for us, it's about working, again, together with the equipment providers, the operators, and the customers to determine what is the best possible way that we
Okay. Yeah, so I'll start first with NEC. NEC is, most people are not familiar, but we've been pretty active in the Japanese market. We run the 5G core in a major Japanese provider, and NEC is heavily promoting Open RAN. And we were actually part of the first Open RAN deployment in Rakuten. It's public knowledge. Now we have many projects going on in Europe with Open RAN. So going to the technology shift, actually they already mentioned. First thing is with 5G, there has been disaggregation. At least that's the new technology trend, right? You're disaggregating your hardware, the radio and your software, your CUDUs, and your service management orchestrations, right? It's all disaggregated out. Once you disaggregate, and it's disaggregated, it's all containerized and cloudified. And the idea is that you can scale up and scale down resources as the demand peaks up and down, right? And to do that effectively in a disaggregated environment, virtualized environment, you need to reintegrate back and manage and orchestrate it. And that's where we are really coming in. My focus goal is on SMO, which is service management and orchestration, where you really need to orchestrate your resources, the cloud resources, the RAN resources, and have a closed loop where if you see from RAN KPIs, your KPIs are going down, okay, you spin up more resources, you find out the root cause, expand it, and then if you see it's certain demands, like in maybe night sort of peaking down, you turn down resources, scale down, and these are cloud resources. So it's not just RAN. It's 5G. It's like virtualized, cloudified, disaggregated. And to really get a return of investment on this, you have to automate, and it has to be efficient. Otherwise, operators are going to find out that it's going to be much more costly than traditional RAN.
Actually, I was wondering about self-organizing networks. So this is a really good use case.
Self-organizing networks.
Self-optimizing. Yeah.
So yeah, self-organizing networks, they've been around for a while and didn't function as intended. And with 5G technologies, actually, they come up with a little bit more what we call like RAN intelligent controller, where you separated out the intelligence and you can run apps. So it's a sort of SDN-like concept where you have platform and you run apps, many third-party apps. So it's the many use cases are like SON use cases, but the architecture is different.
Rohit, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, look, if you look at ServiceNow, we've been in the workflow as long as the organization has been started. So if you look at 5G use cases, being in the workflow domain where ServiceNow stems from, that's going to be our focus. So we've been looking at use cases, exactly what was shared by both Mattias and Dave on fixed wireless access has been the most common use case that's coming up in the industry. Private 5G is becoming more and more interesting for enterprises, especially when you look at oil and gas, industrial manufacturing, healthcare is starting to come in, but those are more in the pilot stages. I agree with Dave that this is still in the initial parts of the journey. So as we look forward towards the next few years, I think that's kind of where we'll stem a lot of new use cases. In the Mobile World Congress a few weeks ago, they announced how the city of Las Vegas has private 5G for public safety.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting. That's one of the first new other launches that I thought. So I think those kind of use cases will start to stem up from what we've seen in the industry, but it's still early days.
So where does, why don't we just start with you and we'll just go around.
Sure.
So where does network slicing, does it apply to private 5G or just public 5G, or slicing is just irrelevant? I mean, I think slicing is supposed to handle airtime fairness, to handle certain objectives, but is it real? Is it really happening? And does it mean only on the wireless side, or should it go end to end? I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think slicing has to go end to end. The first set of slicing use cases are the predefined slices that are existing, right? So the EMBB, URLLC, and so on. The three slices, that's the one that's predefined. But as we look at the advancement of slicing in the next few years, I think those slices will start to come up with new and new use cases. And to me, what that spectrum of slicing will be very defined based on the enterprise that we're going after. So there'll be enterprises that actually want a fully self-service driven end-to-end orchestration of the slice. So if I'm an enterprise that's coming in, I'm going on a self-service portal, I define the service, it initiates the slice, and creates an end-to-end all the way from my RAN to the core. However, there could be some enterprises who don't have the capability and will need to potentially have that fully managed by an enterprise, by a service provider. So I think you need to look at a spectrum of how slicing needs to develop. It will go across the entire spectrum from RAN to the core, but we'll also have to address fully self-service driven network slicing use cases by enterprises that actually have network capabilities and want to just get it defined for a predefined period of time, but then also to have fully managed services from service operators to be delivering.
So would slices apply to private 5G too?
Absolutely, I think so. So depending upon the use cases, I think slices will have defined both for private 5G, especially if you start looking at oil and gas manufacturing and refineries, where it's going to be very difficult to get into those areas and domains. And then also when you look at industrial manufacturing. So I think there are definite use cases where private 5G will also have slicing requirements based on what you do.
Thanks. Mattias?
Yeah, absolutely. Slicing is here to stay. We can't get away from that. We see that many of our customers are requesting more slices to be able to do more fine granular separation of traffic. And with the things like XR coming into place, augmented reality, virtual reality, very, very high bandwidth. And it has a completely different traffic pattern because it sends a lot of information upwards in the network. It used to be that the majority of the traffic went downwards. And this is a challenge for the network. You need to reconfigure it in order to optimize it. And that we spend a lot of time on. You have other scenarios like drones, for example. If you're going to send drones across country and control them with 5G, you need to be pretty certain that they actually have connectivity. So you need to have a predictive connectivity. So you can trust that I will have connectivity throughout my flight path. Otherwise, they will land by themselves here and there. And that is not a nice scenario for a drone company that is delivering packets.
Yeah, I never thought about drones. A really good use case. Absolutely. Thank you. David?
Well, Rohit and Mattias covered most of the use cases.
Okay.
I'm sure there are.
Did he steal your notes?
I'm sure there are a few others. No, but I think there's something that's interesting in there. Along the lines of why do people want slicing? And there are a variety of different reasons you want them. First and foremost, you'll hear people say that they want slicing for security reasons. They want segmentation of different kinds of traffic so that they can understand that when you put your workloads in an environment and you transmit your traffic over a slice, that it is clean. But I think what you're going to find is that the majority of at least early adopter slice applications are going to be more about differentiating traffic in a particular environment. An example of that that's a use case that's interesting and fun would be a large sporting event where you're using the spectrum in the environment for multiple things. Part of it is for augmented reality or different experiential content that's being driven to the people that are at the event. And then there's a whole host of control and event management things in terms of ticket authorization, monetary transactions at concessions. All of those things need to be segmented, and really they're mostly about performance and not really about security. They're about making sure that monetary transactions in that environment go through that as first and foremost. The user satisfaction of the content is actually secondary in that world, but it's a huge differentiator for people to draw people into the environment, to see things live, to get them off their couch.
So you're saying slicing is not only just performance, but even more security.
Now, I actually think initially it's more performance. You hear more security because people, as soon as you say slice, it's a segmented thing. Oh, I want to consider that a containerized environment. I can view that as a security perimeter.
Like
I think that's a little bit
like
naive.
the old days of VLANs in the enterprise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually, like this answer, like I can talk for like an hour on this, but I'll just condense it. So there are different industry verticals, right? First one is the end consumers. Like that's how 4G, 3G, like we've been having end consumers in there. And for that, like on the phone, the standard use case, you can have XR, different, like with a different performance requirements, streaming, so on, right? That is one use case for slicing. The second one is when you go into like industrial IoT, which they already mentioned, where you may have different requirements if you're on the factory floor versus if you're in a hospital setting where the doctor is kind of doing surgery, like live surgery, right? So there are different requirements from the network, high bandwidth, low latency, and so on. Then the other industry vertical is the public safety, like either if it's a locality or like, if it's like if you have like fire or cops, they want like security, right? They want it isolated, guaranteed slice bandwidth, no matter what's happening in an adverse condition, right? Especially if there's an attack, like everybody's on their cell phone, but you want to make sure the EMS and the police gets in their priority slice out. And then like something that NEC is also like we have pretty good businesses, biometrics and basically facial recognition and so on. And one of the use cases that I recently was involved is for a DoD, I can't go much in details, but there's a team like where they have the in-mesh body network, right? So when they're actually going out for a mission, they would like to see in real time the command control plus communicate across each other over 5G network. So it's an in-mesh body network because all their gears are all connected in. So there's so many use cases where you have slicing, right, coming in. It's not just one size fits all.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people are confused about slicing. What is slicing? I think you guys did a great job clarifying it. So thank you. So let's talk about the technical challenges. We know that, private 5G can go on CBRS in North America anyways. CBRS is, everyone's talking about CBRS because you can get licensed and unlicensed spectrum. And then we have also, many other challenges around, I guess, I'd love to hear. So who wants to start here? Rohit, want to go for it?
So I think when you look at challenges, there's a technical challenge, but there's also foundational functions that need to be looked at. But the technical challenge really is if you look at the 5G use cases, and you covered a little bit in your Plenary, but if you look at the ability to work in a 5G use case will require, partnering and working across hyperscalers, data centers, things that are not actually always within a telco. So I think working in that diverse landscape with various kinds of workloads, the ability to be able to orchestrate that across the service layer and across the business layer, I think that's where the challenge happens, because that's a lot more than what telcos have been historically doing. So the ability to now bring on new partners and, for example, having a computer vision capability that's delivered by a partner, running on a compute service, and then being able to orchestrate that at the time of compute, not the way that the connectivity has been delivered in the past, but being able to deliver it as the compute gets consumed. I think that's where going to be challenges. So I think the orchestration, automation that we've been speaking about most of this afternoon, at every layer and tier is where the technical challenge is. So you got to do it at a network layer, you got to do it at a service layer, you got to do it at a business layer, so that you can provide that end-to-end visibility to the customer and then also to a service provider and how you deliver it.
That's interesting. I never even thought about that. It seems like a really important challenge that we need to overcome. But yes, you're Ericsson, so you see it all, and you're the chief architect too.
But I will not go into the spectrum debate today. Of course, if you own your own spectrum, it's better. But how much better, that depends on the use case. So we shouldn't draw any conclusions.
But what are the other technical challenges?
What is the real technical challenge for me is that for most user experience, it's not only the radio network that comes into play. It's the core network, it is transition to the cloud, and that often means that you transition multiple operators. And what I would like to be able to do is to provide a premium quality of service through the entire chain, regardless if it's terminating in one of the big operators or in another one, for example, for a conference call. I want to ensure that I have the best optimum quality for all of these. That means that I need a real-time communication and mechanism to settle these quality requests among the different operators that are in play. So I need these interfaces that you're working on in order to build this in an affordable way, because I can't do an SI project for each and every operator in the world for every application. That's impossible.
Well, if Sybil was here, she'd be happy because she's been working on 84.1, and then they've been working also on the slice performance. I can't remember the name of that. 126.
Yeah, actually, like you mostly stole my answer. So within, when we talk about SMO, right, service management orchestration in 5G network, you have the RAN domains, that's the RAN, then you have the core, and then you have the transport, and you have to orchestrate your slice performance across all three, and that's one challenge. The other challenge is if you go into private 5G, and there are different flavors of private 5G, right, from spectrum and going into where the service provider or the local service provider actually runs the private 5G for them, or they give them a slice on a public 5G network, right? It's a private slice for the enterprise, but on the public. So there are different use cases there. But the key thing is every enterprise is going to have very different, I would say, deployments set up. And you have to orchestrate that all across that. If you are the operator and if you're handling just not the RAN, right, RAN and just sharing that would get handled there locally. But if you have to do it across your transport and core with different kinds of deployments, right, different flavors of deployment in enterprises, there may be some CBRS, spectrum sharing. There is another one in rural networks, they actually have RAN sharing. They have RAN, single RAN network being shared by multiple operators. So you have to cater to all of that at the SMO layer. And you have to orchestrate the slices across different and provide the sort of clean performance that's expected as if everybody is having their own network. But I think the complexity is it's massive scale across different domains, not just one domain.
Yeah, but isn't that what Mattias said? Sonata can easily cross-connect all these operators, and we're defining slice profile objectives, and we're aligning it through GPP, right? Yeah. And so why can't we take a payload that is a slice definition that we've done in 126, apply it against Sonata and Cantata, and connect the ecosystem if that's what I'm understanding a big problem.
You can, but that's a day zero problem in effect, right? You can do that. The question is that all of the different federated interconnects that exist in a typical enterprise service architecture, they're all going to evolve independent, right? One of the good things about 5G is we're moving to cloud native. One of the bad things about 5G is we're moving to cloud native. And what I mean by that is all of the different service elements and the interconnect points are all going to evolve independently every day. CI/CD, continuous deployment, and things change. So when things change, how do you infer out of the telemetry data something that's going to happen because of that change before it happens? So that the service level experience that your consumers are expecting is maintained. And that's tricky. The APIs are absolutely mandatory in order to be able to do it, but they need to be extended in order to get this telemetry information up to some system that from an automation perspective can determine when things are going bad.
So we intentionally did not do Presto Op if you look at our architecture, but we did do between providers to send the operational performance, and Jack actually is working on performance. Why we're working so much on the operational APIs is to do the service OEM on the performance side. Now, how we're getting that data will be proprietary for now, or some, but how we'll send that to operators and to even the enterprise customers is really our operation APIs. And what we're working on right now is on SOAM, the service and performance, and Jack and Mike Benchek and all the team are working on that for that reason. So I think we're kind of probably hitting that in the right way, but probably not the low level, the Presto side.
But where else is it going to happen in here?
Well, no, I mean, I don't know. People, I think we're probably the one of the hidden secrets around, and people don't know what we're doing. And I think that's kind of what we need to get out there. So, hey, last question. I know we're getting to the end here. What do you think is the role of MEF? We just talked about MEF's doing so many things. We're doing automation. We're doing SASE, zero trust. Now, we're talking about slicing. We're working on, so what's the role for MEF in 5G? I talked to the board and the tab about fixed wireless access. Can we buy and sell fixed wireless access? Why don't we just go around, maybe start?
Yeah,
Rohit,
I mean, you talked about it in the plenary. When we looked at the MEF and what areas we was focused on, one is that life cycle, the entire life cycle of the APIs going across the different stages. And the second thing is the service payloads as well, the service definition of what the API structure would look like, what are the services going to look like itself. And I think if the 127 stuff that I think exactly what Dave talked about, if we extend that capabilities to be able to talk about the 5G services, the definition of what the 5G service looks like, and show the entire end-to-end orchestration from the service operator to the hyperscaler to the data center, because there are going to be multiple players in the market, I think that's what we need to be able to solve. Because it's not going to be all within the organization, within the service provider itself. It's how do we operate across not just service provider to service provider, but service provider to a hyperscaler, service provider to a data center provider, because that's the end-to-end orchestration that we'll need to be able to solve for it. So I think the LSO framework as it exists right now, to be able to evolve that into that domain, to have other players and parties to contribute and look at that end-to-end life cycle, I think is an area that
well, excellent. Thank you. Mattias?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to secure that operators cooperate on the basic table stakes and don't compete on the table stakes.
Thank you. Totally agree. You nailed it right on. That's why I said the philosophy, the we philosophy, has to be there. Even people think, oh, it's MEF APIs, TM formats. We're not thinking that way anymore. And I think what you're saying is the communication providers have to think of a we model, not a us and them model. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there is plenty of space to differentiate on top of that, but at least the basics needs to be working in a similar way, so it can be abstracted in a common way, so the enterprise users and the applicators can pick it up without having to worry about who am I working with in order to reach a global. After all, we are building a global innovation platform, and we need to have the basics aligned. Otherwise, it will not be global.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. Similar to the comments that are made, I mean, this is about a community environment that is its own kind of community, right? The telco operator community has been working together for a long time, achieving good things and good successes, but it has to continue and it has to bring in more. It has to bring in the hyperscalers, and it's doing that. It has to bring in the network equipment providers, and it's doing that. It has to bring in the open source community in a way that's going to drive other forms of innovation.
That's right.
In the security realm, in the performance realm, in the applications that we haven't even thought of realm. It's a place where people can work together in an egalitarian form to achieve outcomes that are to everyone's best interest, while managing, frankly, competitive interests. All of us have to get paid at the end of the day, and we all have specific things that we do that allow us to differentiate in the market. We just have to be mature enough to work together through that and make sure that we arrive at good solutions that are end-to-end.
Awesome. Karthik?
Yeah, since I've been in MEF for quite a while, I'll probably give a little bit different answer. So we first need to, of course, for us, the biggest, I would say for MEF, the biggest bang for the buck would be on Cantata, especially fixed wireless access, right? Private 5G is going to be much harder to follow, but that's where leading up to my second part, which is we need to get the right experts in. We can't have the folks who have been working on carrier Ethernet and IP start doing 5G standards, right? Because you don't have the right people, and you have to, even though we have the same service provider names, we have to get the right people from the service providers and the vendors who have been working on 5G, right? And who have had a history like 3G, 2G. They understand the evolution and the problems, right? And that's where, like, because I've been in MEF for a while, so that's the thing like we have to do. And of course, the biggest thing, like I said, is yes, fixed wireless access Cantata.
So that's interesting. The wireless group sides of the providers have to come involved too.
Yeah.
But you would not think the wireless and the wired sides don't talk to each other? They don't realize what they have to do together? Because we just said that it's an end-to-end model. So.
Yeah, I would hope so, but actually reality is pretty different.
Yeah. And by the way, just came out of my mind, last question, I know I'm probably over. I'm going to yank us out. But do you believe the hyperscalers, they've invested into 5G, you're seeing all of them got 5G cores now. Are they just going to say, like, get with it or get out of the way, or are they going to collaborate? What's your thoughts? Any thoughts?
I think there will be an area of space for both to coexist. I think there will be hyperscaler use cases which will be applicable to them. But if you look at some of the 5G use cases, and I agree with Dave that today the requirement is more performance and security. But if you flip that around, and as we go forward, if security becomes one of the priority requirement on 5G use cases, it's not going to be the hyperscalers that can provide that. It's going to be the service providers that will actually excel in that space. So I think depending upon the use case, you might see both working. But when you look at security as a domain, it will be always let the service provider be.
I would just use an example of the hyperscalers. I think that they represent a threat, but it's not because they strategically want the business of the operators.
No,
they represent a threat in the same way they represented a threat to data center networking. They couldn't buy what they needed, so they built it, right? So the same thing exists here. The standards are there, the spectrum is there, they could get access to it. AWS is making lots of noise in private 5G. It'll be interesting to see what they do. Mostly it's out of need, not out of strategic desire to impinge. So I think if you present a way for them to interoperate in a way that works for them, then they'd be glad to do it and let the businesses remain.
Mattias?
I think there is plenty of space in all these different segments. The technology is so flexible, so it's a lot about how you package it, how you go to market. That is as important as the technology. I think the operators have a very strong position in the regulated spectrum domain, in the public networks, in the national networks, in mission-critical networks, so they have enough to do.
Got it. Any last thoughts? Because we're going to get yanked off and we're getting the text saying get off.
Yeah, like I pretty much go to echo what everyone said. There is space to collaborate, and if we don't, they're going to build their own. That's their culture.
Well, I hope you give a hand for these gentlemen. It's just absolutely been enlightening for me. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.